Welcome to Mind Talk's AI Mining Insight, powered by AI. And we are back with another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, it's a really interesting development, I think, out of Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
Indonesia has this brand new Indonesia Bullion Bank.
Right.
And we've got articles, reports, even so the regulatory fine print to kind of go through.
Okay.
And I think a mission today is pretty straightforward. Understand the core goals behind this bullion bank and what it means for Indonesia's gold mining industry.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Absolutely. It's a pretty potentially significant initiative for Indonesia's economy, and it's standing in the global gold market. I think to begin with, it might be helpful to sort of clarify what exactly we mean by a bullion bank.
Okay.
Essentially, it's a financial institution that specializes in precious metals. And in this context, we're talking primarily about gold.
Right. So unlike the banks that most of us are using every day for our regular, currencies, these are banks focused on buying, selling, and storage of gold.
Yeah.
So think less about your checking account and more about actual gold bars.
Yeah.
But it's not just about physical gold sitting in vaults, is it?
No.
We've got mentions here of other ways that gold can be held and traded.
Yeah, that's a good point. So while physical gold, like bars and coins, is central, bullion banks also deal with what you might call representations of gold ownership.
Okay.
So this can include things like gold certificates, exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, which are essentially investment funds that track the price of gold, and even futures contracts.
Okay.
So these instruments allow for trading and investment in gold without the immediate need to handle the physical metal.
Okay.
So it's kind of like owning a share in a giant gold repository.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sort of broadens access and makes it easier to trade.
Right.
Now let's get to the core of why Indonesia is doing this.
Yeah.
It's not every day a country launches a national bullion bank.
Yeah.
And the fact that President Prabowo Subianto officiated the launch on February 27, 2025, signals that this is important.
It does.
What's the main driving force behind this?
The overarching goal, and this is highlighted across all of our sources, is for Indonesia to keep more of the gold that is mined within its own borders. And this is directly linked to Indonesia's broader strategy of downstreaming its natural resources.
Okay.
You might recall discussions around this with other commodities.
Right.
It's all about adding value domestically. And this initiative aligns perfectly with President Prabowo's Asta missions, which are his 8 priorities for strengthening Indonesia's economy.
Downstreaming for gold. Can you break that down a bit more in this context?
Certainly. So Indonesia is a major global gold producer, right? They have significant reserves, substantial mining output.
Yeah.
But historically, a large portion of this raw gold has been exported.
Right.
And subsequently, Indonesia often imports finished gold products, such as jewelry, refined bars, and of course, these imports come at a higher cost. So the idea behind downstreaming in this case is to reverse that trend.
Okay.
Process and refine the gold domestically, manufacture value-added products, and then potentially export those higher value items.
So keep the raw gold here, create jobs in refining and manufacturing, and then sell the higher value goods.
Exactly.
It's like taking raw timber and turning it into furniture instead of just exporting logs.
Yeah.
I remember reading that President Widodo had mentioned gold specifically after the big push on nickel processing.
Exactly. In a 2023 speech, President Widodo specifically emphasized that after the progress made in adding value to nickel, gold would be the next priority in the mining sector. So this Indonesia Bullion Bank initiative is a tangible step towards achieving that strategic objective.
Okay, the big picture is becoming clearer, but let's zoom in on the specific economic goals here. We're seeing some pretty impressive numbers being mentioned in connection with this.
We are. Research linked to Bank Syariah Indonesia, BSI's involvement as one of the first licensed bullion banks, suggests a potential boost to Indonesia's GDP ranging from 30 to 50 trillion rupiah just from BSI's activities alone.
Wow.
And looking at the broader national impact, some estimates go as high as 245 trillion rupiah. There's also the significant expectation of job creation, with projections around 1.8 million new jobs.
Those are figures that certainly get your attention. Where are these economic gains expected to come from?
Several key areas. A significant one is the strengthening of Indonesia's foreign exchange reserves.
Okay.
So by managing and storing more of its gold domestically, through the bullion bank, the country can reduce its reliance on foreign entities for these services and, crucially, limit the outflow of gold.
Right, so keep it at home.
Yeah. This also directly contributes to accelerating national savings and increasing Indonesia's own gold reserves. A more developed and robust domestic gold market is also anticipated to enhance overall monetary stability.
So it's not just about the physical gold. It's about its strategic role in the national financial framework,
right,
impacting currency stability and overall wealth.
Mm-hmm.
What about the everyday Indonesian citizen? How might this initiative directly affect them?
Yeah, this is where the financial inclusion aspect becomes really interesting.
Right.
So the bullion banks are expected to introduce new investment and financing options that are backed by gold and tailored to various levels of risk tolerance.
Okay.
So this could include savings accounts where returns are linked to the price of gold, making gold accessible as a savings vehicle, even for small amounts.
Right.
We also see the potential for gold-backed loans for small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs, where their existing gold holdings can be used as collateral.
Oh, interesting.
So this could unlock access to much-needed capital for growth.
Using gold as collateral for an SME loan, that's a very tangible way this could empower local businesses. It could provide access to funding that might otherwise be unavailable through traditional channels.
Mm-hmm.
What about the existing players in the gold industry? The mining companies, the refiners, how do they fit into this new landscape?
So the bullion banks are designed to provide critical support to the domestic gold industry by establishing themselves as reliable buyers of gold that is mined and refined within Indonesia. And by offering competitive prices, they provide miners and refiners with enhanced liquidity. They can also potentially offer financing options for their operations. Ultimately, the goal is to foster a more integrated and dynamic domestic gold ecosystem, maximizing the value addition from Indonesia's national gold resources.
So we're looking at a more interconnected and self-sustaining domestic gold market. I also recall reading something about formalization of artisanal mining.
Yeah.
How does the Bullion Bank initiative tie into that?
Yeah, that's a crucial element with significant social and economic implications. So Indonesia has a substantial amount of artisanal and small-scale gold mining, a significant portion of which operates outside the formal regulatory framework, and this often leads to environmental damage. Use of mercury is a major concern, social issues, and lost tax revenue by creating a formal and regulated domestic market for gold. Through the bullion banks, the government aims to incentivize these artisanal miners to operate within the legal framework, which would help curb illegal practices and increase tax collection.
Moving towards a more transparent and environmentally responsible small-scale mining sector.
Exactly.
And I believe there was also mention of the potential for gold-backed financial instruments to potentially bolster the rupiah and attract foreign investment. Can you elaborate on that?
So the idea here is that if Indonesia develops a substantial and well-managed reserve of gold within the country, and if credible and widely accepted, gold-backed financial instruments become available, it could lend greater stability to the Indonesian rupiah. Furthermore, the presence of a robust and transparent gold market could enhance Indonesia's appeal as an investment destination, particularly for investors interested in precious metals and related sectors.
So a wide range of potential benefits on both a macro and microeconomic level. Now, who are the key institutions that are actually making this bullion bank a reality?
So we know that Bank Syariah Indonesia, or BSI, and the state-owned pawnbroking company, PT Pegadaian, are the first two institutions to receive licenses to operate as bullion banks. BSI's license was granted on February 12, 2025, just a couple weeks before the official launch. And Pegadaian actually received their license a bit earlier in December of 2024.
And there's a specific regulatory framework that governs all of this activity, isn't there?
Absolutely. OJK, the Financial Services Authority of Indonesia, Regulation number 17 of 2024, is the key piece of legislation. And this regulation is derived from Law number 4 of 2023, concerning the development and strengthening of the financial sector, also known as P2SK. This regulation essentially sets out the rules and guidelines for all bullion banking activities within Indonesia.
What kind of rules are we talking about? What criteria does a financial institution need to meet to become a licensed bullion bank?
So the regulation clearly defines what constitutes bullion banking activities, encompassing savings, financing, trading, and the crucial aspect of gold custody. It also establishes the eligibility requirements for financial institutions seeking a license.
Okay.
And a significant requirement is a minimum core capital of 14 trillion rupiah.
Okay.
So BSI, being a large state-owned bank, already meets this substantial threshold. And this high capital requirement suggests a deliberate strategy to ensure that only financially robust institutions are involved.
That makes sense. You need institutions with the financial muscle
Yeah.
to handle the scale and the potential volatility of the gold market.
Right.
What about the gold itself? Are there specific standards for the quality and purity of the gold that these bullion banks will be dealing with?
Yes. The regulation mandates that any gold traded in bullion banking activities must have a minimum purity level of 99.9% for bullion. And this very high standard ensures a consistent level of quality and helps to establish trust and credibility in the market.
And for financial institutions that were already engaged in some form of gold-related activities, before this new regulatory framework came into effect, are there any transitional arrangements in place?
There are indeed. So any existing financial institutions that were involved in bullion-related activities prior to the enactment of OJK Regulation Number 17 of 2024 had a specific deadline, which was April 18, 2025, to formally apply for a bullion banking license. This provides a clear pathway for bringing all relevant players under the new regulatory umbrella.
Okay, so we have the key players, we have the regulatory structure. Now let's delve into the specific services that these newly licensed bullion banks are offering.
Okay.
We've touched on a few, but can we get into some more concrete examples, perhaps drawing from what BSI and Pegadaian are already doing?
Certainly. So gold savings accounts are a foundational offering.
Okay.
These are often branded as Simponan Emas or Tabungan Emas Syariah. They allow customers to deposit funds, which are then converted into the equivalent weight of gold at the prevailing market price. The really interesting thing is the low entry point. BSI, for example, allows you to start saving with as little as 0.01 grams of gold. And these savings are typically tracked through digital records or in traditional passbooks. Pegadaian also offers a similar product called Deposito Emas, where the returns are also calculated in grams of gold.
So it makes saving in gold accessible to a much wider segment of the population, even those with limited disposable income.
Yeah.
What about the financing aspect? How does that work with gold as the core asset?
Gold financing, or pembian emas, takes several forms.
Okay.
Pegadaian, for instance, offers Gadai emas, which is essentially a gold-backed loan, so you pledge your gold as collateral. And they typically offer loan amounts that are a high percentage of the gold's value, often between 85 and 95%. They also have a product called Cicil emas, which allows customers to purchase gold in installments over a set period, typically ranging from 3 to 36 months.
Okay.
BSI, adhering to Islamic finance principles, offers sharia-compliant gold financing options that avoid the charging of interest or riba.
Installment plans for buying gold. That could be a significant driver for increasing individual gold ownership.
Exactly.
And of course, there's the fundamental aspect of actually buying and selling gold.
Yes, gold trading or Perdagangan Emas. OJK Regulation 17 of 2024 specifies a minimum transaction weight of 500 grams. For physical gold trading, unless the transaction is directly related to savings, financing or payment, or deposit activities. So this suggests that larger-scale physical gold trading has a higher threshold. Pegadaian facilitates gold trading through dedicated relationship managers, providing a direct point of contact for individuals or entities looking to buy or sell larger quantities of gold.
So for significant gold transactions, you'd likely be working with a dedicated professional.
Yeah.
And finally, a crucial element for any gold owner is secure storage.
Precisely. Gold custody, or titipan emas, involves the secure safekeeping of physical gold on behalf of a customer, with the agreement that the exact same gold will be returned. So this is typically managed through allocated accounts, meaning the customer-specific gold is segregated and meticulously recorded. Pegadaian offers two distinct forms of titipan emas to cater to different storage needs. And importantly, the regulations stipulate that in the event of a bullion bank facing bankruptcy, this custodied gold is legally considered separate from the bank's assets and must be returned directly to the rightful owners.
That's a really important protection for individuals and entities entrusting their gold to these institutions. So with these services now coming online, what kind of impact are we anticipating on Indonesia's core gold mining industry?
So the potential for a significant increase in demand for domestically mined gold is very real,
Okay.
as bullion banks like BSI and Pegadaian aim to source gold within Indonesia to support their various product offerings. It creates a direct and potentially very large market for Indonesian gold miners.
Okay.
And this increased domestic demand also provides a strong economic incentive for miners to invest in expanding their operations, and crucially, in developing domestic smelting and refining capabilities to increase the value added of their production, aligning perfectly with the government's downstreaming ambitions.
Right.
Furthermore, the bullion banks themselves can become potential sources of financing for mining operations.
So a much more direct and supportive relationship between the financial system and the mining sector.
Exactly.